Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vengeful and Self-Righteous Comic Vault. It is me, Captain Logan, and joining me, as usual, is Austin, the Day Ghost. Austin, it occurs to me that I don't have this set up to where you can see panels, so I better fix that for you.
Oh, no.
So you can see what the hell we're talking about here.
What is this, your year 2 of being a YouTuber?
Yeah, we're still real young here, and we've already gone to screaming everything and talking about comics too long.
Exactly.
We've already degenerated, folks. Well, once again, it's Bat May, and Austin doesn't own a Batman shirt, so he has resorted to The Simpsons.
Bartman.
Yep, that's the connection. Well done. It's not even a Bartman shirt. Like, if you had a Bartman shirt...
No. Bart is Bartman.
Now, how many Simpson shirts do you own? Are you like me, where I've got like 15 Batman shirts, and you have like a bunch of Simpson shirts? I don't have that many Batman shirts.
I only have 2.
Oh, okay.
I think of things where I have like a lot of shirts of them, it's like I have 2 Simpsons and 2 Man-Thing, and that's probably
as close to a lot as you get. I have way too much Ninja Turtles. And I have probably like 4 Power Ranger shirts and like 7 Ninja Turtle shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
You gotta love what you love. I love too many things, so it's like I want to have shirts of everything, but I'm like, I'm fine with each thing being represented by one.
So Austin and I are back to regular comic vaults, or at least fingers crossed. A couple weeks ago, so Austin's picking a thing, and then I pick a thing. It's Bat May, so we're just doing Batman stuff this month. A couple weeks ago, Austin picked, what did we even review last time?
Dark Detective.
That's right, it was Dark.
Been talking about for like 2 years.
Forever, yeah, Dark Detective. Yeah. And it's just my head was swimming in other things that we've done recently for Request, because we've done a lot of comics for Request lately too.
Oh yeah.
And because we did a Batman thing for Request even right before that. And then today I picked Batman Year 2, so we're not in exactly the same era. We're like, well at least, obviously not, but for Englehart, we're like, 10 years apart. And then, of course, Dark Detective is coming back to Englehart years later. So this is before that, but this is after Englehart's initial run.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, exactly, because that's pre-crisis,
right?
I think.
And this would have been just after, and this is, I think, shortly after Year 1. In fact, I think they start working on this before Year 1's even out.
Well, because Year 1's 86 and this is 87.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I read the foreword that O'Barr wrote for the 30th anniversary collection, which is how Austin and I read this. So we're going to talk about Year 2, but also, at least briefly, its follow-up, which is called Full Circle, where he and Alan Davis come back and do a direct sequel to this. In my opinion, maybe even a little too direct, but we'll talk about that, because I had never read that. I own that. I never knew what it was. I just knew it had a cool cover with Batman with a sword. And I was like, I don't know, or whatever that cover was. I was like, oh, that's cool. I never knew what that was. And it's follow up to this, and the history of this is really kind of fascinating. How the artists work, where Davis does one issue, gets upset about changes, leaves, and then draws a whole 64-page one-shot as a follow-up like 8 years later. So like, that's very interesting.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that he left because he was annoyed with where the story went.
And no, we'll talk about it. It's not about the story. It's about art changes that he was asked to make.
Oh,
yeah. So
okay.
We'll get into that in just a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, like Austin said, 1987. This is while O'Barr and Alan Davis are doing a regular Batman book together. I thought in his forward he said something about Detective, but then I also read that they did Batman the Outsiders, so I'm not sure what exactly the history is there with what Batman books they were working on and at what point, because I've just not read a lot of that stuff.
Did like a bigger run on Detective, so
okay.
But then they maybe also did that Outsiders one, but I don't even know what that is offhand.
Yeah, Dan Schneider. We'll get to the phantasm of it all. Let me talk real briefly, Austin, if you don't mind, about how I even landed on this and why I picked it. Because Austin and I, like I said, we're going back and forth in picking our things. So I guess we have to justify our choices. And I decided to do year two because I read this on a whim months ago, sometime last year, and didn't know about this book. I mean, I knew there was a year two and a year three, but I didn't know what was in this, and so I was just kind of curious about it. And I've been reading a lot in digital, and I was like flipping around through some titles, and I was like, oh yeah, year two, that was a thing. Oh, and Batman's got a gun on the cover. That's weird. What's that about? So I opened it up and started reading it, and I was fascinated both by the notion of Batman having the gun that killed his parents and using it. And, obviously that's done for really provocative reasons, and it kind of works. Like, it jumps out at you, and you're like, well, how do you even make that work in a story? That sounds like a terrible idea. And so I was just really curious about what that was and why it was being done. And then you had this really cool, creepy, ultra-violent looking villain in the Reaper, who immediately jumps out as a Phantasm-like character. And Phantasm, I always thought, was a completely... There you go, Dan Schneider. I've now said Phantasm. Phantasm is I thought, a completely original character. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, there's no way the Mask of the Phantasm isn't looking at this book. And just with his initial appearance and the way he talks really theatrically, and like he might as well be saying like the same thing Phantasm does, when he's like, I mean, Phantasm says your angel of death awaits, and the Reaper is like, you will fear the Reaper. And like, last time we did a comic review, Austin, we were talking about like voices that we had in our heads for characters. I actually had the Phantasm voice in my head for Reaper. Like, I was doing that voice out loud. I couldn't help
really
myself.
Thought you were gonna say your voice for the Reaper was walking.
Oh, okay. Why?
Because he's got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
No, that's funny. I didn't think of that. But I don't know. It's just the if you read it out loud, the cadence seems really similar to the like put upon voice that Phantasm has, and it's drawn in, I mean, the text is done in like a thicker, different kind of font, so like you're imagining that it's either putting on a voice or he's got a like voice modulator thing, and so like right away I'm thinking Phantasm, and then story points start leading me to Mask of the Phantasm, to the point where I started to wonder if maybe even the twist from Phantasm is in this book. Mm-hmm. And it isn't. And there's actually no mystery as to who the Reaper is, but I wondered for a minute if there was going to be some kind of switch. Just because of that. And then we'll talk about the Circle later, because I really thought it was going to happen there.
I did too. I was like, okay, this is where it oh no, okay. That's entirely made for that movie.
And then the other thing that I found myself wondering if this influenced at all is simply the fact that the love interest in the Nolan movies is named Rachel.
I'm going to say, having now read this,
probably not.
Probably no way. I
just wondered about it because it's really odd that she's not an adaptation of anything. Mm-hmm. And Batman had and this was just my experience reading it the first time, I was like, oh, Batman had a major love interest named Rachel? Like, I never knew about that. Mm-hmm. And of course, this character has nothing at all to do with D.A. Rachel Dawes, and her name is completely different, and like, the only thing they have in common is they're a love interest for Batman, and they're both named Rachel.
So I wish in The Dark Knight it was like, which one are you going to pick, Bruce or Harvey? Neither. I'm going to be none.
I'm going to go be a nun!
The answer is none.
Well, we don't want to make this review too difficult to follow in case you haven't read this, so we'll let Austin go ahead and give us a plot synopsis. Austin, how do you want to handle this? Should we talk about these two things kind of together, or should we just go through year two and then go through Full Circle?
Yeah, we can just handle them together if you want. It's up to you.
Okay, let's kind of just see how the spirit moves us, shall we?
Oh, okay, so I'll just start with year two then?
Yeah, go ahead and just give us the synopsis of year two, and we'll see how, like... Because you know me, I have a tendency to stop you and start talking about stuff. But I tell you what, I'll try not to do that and let you just do the full synopsis for both of them, and we both know that I will fail, and it will go some other way.
That's what we need, is the rapid fire like clock thing going for how long it takes you to interrupt my synopsis.
Where we just start the clock at the beginning of the thing. It's like, Cap, I only got 35 seconds into the synopsis.
We only got 0.3 seconds.
Okay, but at the risk of talking too much about my process or whatever, do you know why that ends up happening? Because my approach when I review by myself tends to be like criticism and analysis as I go.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm just used to doing synopsis and the review at the same time, and it's very difficult not to do that because an idea will come to me and I'll go, oh crap, I'm not going to remember that.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
But anyway, I'm going to let you attempt it, but you're so much better at synopsis than me, so that's why I always make you do it.
Okay, Batman Year 2 takes place a year after Batman Year 1. And there's a new villain in town. He's calling himself the Reaper, but he's not really a new villain in town. He's actually an old vigilante from back in the day. And he's way cooler and stronger than Batman. So Batman has to team up with the mob, and he gets out the gun that killed his parents, and he's like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to shoot the Reaper. And the mob teams
He's got to fight fire with fire.
Exactly, he's got to fight fire with fire, and the mob.
Okay, the clock stopped at like 25 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Bruce Wayne meets a new girl in town who is the daughter of.
Her name's the Nun.
The Nun. She's training to become a nun, but Bruce Wayne and her are in love, I guess. So that's a thing. And Leslie Thompson
apparently
Tompkins is just kind of there.
At some point, they fall in love off screen, off panel.
Yeah, exactly. And so Batman's he's like, I'm going to kill the Reaper, and then I'm going to kill Joe Chill. But the Reaper kills Joe Chill, and then...
Well, hold on. Did you even establish that he was working with Joe Chill?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I missed that. Or I must have missed that. I thought you just said the mob. I didn't think Joe Chill ever came up.
The mob teams him up with Joe Chill.
Apologies. I'll just let you go.
You're okay. You're okay.
I trust you. I really do.
And then the Reaper accidentally kills himself, and then Batman buries the gun that killed his parents, but then... time later, maybe a year, maybe who knows, Joe Chill's son pulls out the gun that killed Bruce Wayne's parents.
This is Austin going to a full circle. So
yes.
So importantly, well, I just want to make the distinction between the books. Because it's not part of year 2. Yes. Importantly, they did a follow-up that was just a 64-page graphic novel that goes full circle, going to the son of Joe Chill.
Yeah, exactly. And Batman's angry at Robin for being clumsy, and then Batman fights the Reaper, who is Joe
I can't catch up with my panels. Hold on. I'm still in. And also we've got Todd McFarlane art, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we will. And then the Reaper's going to kill Batman through psychologicalness of playing a movie that's kind of how Joe Chill killed Bruce Wayne's parents, but not really. It's just them assuming.
What was that?
It was supposed to be like a psychological thing of, well, he watched his parents die, so it'll really upset him if he sees that.
Right, but what physically was the video?
Oh, I think it's like a movie they recorded.
Oh,
that's my assumption.
Okay,
they,
so
acted out.
Is the kid in it supposed to be Joe Chill's kid pretending to be Bruce Wayne? Is that what's going on?
I guess so.
Because I thought sorry, I'm hung up on this, and I realize that you're supposed to be doing synopsis, but I gotta ask you about this because I'm so confused about it. Because they say that it's a combination of a film and like putting Bruce Wayne on drugs. So I thought the movie they made, or the movie that they're showing him, is different from what he's seeing. And so then I thought, is it surveillance footage of the actual murder of Bruce Wayne's parents?
No, I think they made a film, because there's a point where Batman's like, that's not how it happened. and it cuts
But I
to
thought he
Joe
said that because
Chill's
he was on
son.
drugs and he was seeing it differently.
No, because then it cuts to Joe Chill's son and daughter, and they're like, "Ah, if only we knew who this guy actually was, then we would have gotten the details
Oh,
right."
that's true. That's true. Okay, okay. I had to read this one in a hurry too, so I might have missed some details.
No, it's okay. So then Robin breaks Batman out, and he redeems himself, and then Batman beats the second Reaper, and they all go home happy.
The end.
Exactly, it all.
I just jumping around, and then we'll back off and talk about this more broadly. But I wasn't sure how I felt about Alan Davis's art for this material initially. I think I've read him in places here and there, and he is arguably a pretty traditional kind of like late Silver Age type DC artist. I liked his stuff in Full Circle, I think, a lot better than his first issue for year two. Like it's more detailed, and for lack of a better word, it's a little bit more contemporary. Like in the foreword that O'Barr writes, he says that Alan comes back to do Full Circle at the absolute top of his game, which I really agree with. Like, you can see a lot of maturity that's happened over just a few years getting into this, and
Mhm.
these panels in particular with the with the movie, with like the black and white sketchier stuff with
Mhm.
Batman looking on, I love that stuff. I love how expressive Batman's face is.
Yeah,
uh
no, and the color choices in that Full Circle issue are really great as well. Like I was talking with Ty a little bit before the show, and he was because I posted some art in the Discord, and he was like, "Oh, I've never seen Batman colored to be teal when in the shadows before. That's a really neat choice." And there's some really cool artwork with that.
Dan Schneider says Todd McFarlane's Robin is fugly. Well, you don't see a Todd McFarlane Robin in this. All the Robin we're looking at here is Alan's,
Hmm.
and he's got kind of a weird take on him because he's got really odd eyes. But
Hmm.
what I like about it is gritty street level, uh, golden age period Batman design, Batman and Robin design, where he's
Hmm.
making a really good case for those earlier outfits, and especially Robin's, real bright, you know, is people always kind of make fun of, like really silly tights, uh, in a grittier, rougher kind of situation, and it really plays.
Hmm.
Like, it looks quite good to me.
Yeah, no, and he does what I like with Robin, which is that Robin isn't exactly going head to head with people. Like he does like little odd jobs for Batman.
He's almost a
Um,
distraction,
yeah.
which makes so much sense for a circus performer, right? Like, he's doing a circus thing. He's like jumping in, he's giving a performance, he's confusing criminals, and then Batman's taking them out.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was really neat.
I do too. And then he has all these, silly one-liners to distract criminals with, and then
Mhm.
and then Batman always has these like really dry-witted, mic drop one-liners, particularly in Full Circle. Like, he's got a few in year two, but he's got 3 or 4 points in Full Circle where I'm like, I wasn't sure if I liked how talky this Batman is, and then these one-liners are great.
I guess since we're at art, I'll just say I really wish that Alan did the whole year two Full Circle
I do too.
because I'm not a big fan of Todd McFarlane's art in this. I don't think it's very good.
So, as everybody knows, I love McFarlane,
Mhm.
I and it's just not quite right for this, or maybe I should say it's early enough in his career that he's just not refined enough for it, or maybe he's kind of rushing it or phoning it in, because there are, and we'll go back and look here in a minute. I don't want to have to like scroll way back and make you guys look at every page, so I'm going to bring it up here. But there are certain pages that look great, I think, and then other ones where he's making sacrifices, almost like he's just on a real quick timetable.
When I also think that you're seeing his inexperience here, because I think there's parts where,
Yeah,
especially action, are like really incomprehensible and hard to follow. Where I'm like,
absolutely.
what is the like basis for where anyone is?
But it is, important to note that he catches on and learns all that stuff real quick because Spawn's
Mhm.
only 5 years after this.
Yeah, no, that's true. Uh, but that was, I thought, like a weak point with this, especially because I think Alan's art in both the first issue of Year Two and Full Circle are quite a bit better. I liked it quite a bit. There's also some weird
Yeah, like I said,
anatomy stuff
I don't
when
like it.
McFarlane takes over. Like, I think the first time we see the Reaper in the first issue with Alan is really cool.
Yeah.
But then when McFarlane takes over, there's like a weird part where he's kicking a guy, but his leg is literally on backwards, where the front of him is like the the back end of where his leg. Like it's really weird.
Well, they don't match each other real well because Alan draws more realistic anatomy, and McFarlane always made a big deal, especially in this period, about exaggerating things and
Hmm.
not going for realism. And so McFarlane just wasn't the guy to put on this right after.
Hmm.
I think if McFarlane, there's a lot of ifs here, but I think if McFarlane is drawing this book 3 or 4 years later, and he starts with it, and he gets to imagine the look of it from the beginning, it probably looks a lot better.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of McFarlane in general, but I agree with that. I think it would have looked a lot better even just 3 years later.
You just don't want anybody else to
What's
compare
that,
it.
sorry?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, it like cut out though when
Oh,
you
okay.
said that.
You just don't want to put McFarlane up against anybody else that you have to compare him to.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, I think I like Alan's art better in Full Circle. Although now that I'm going back and looking at this again, it's pretty clean. And he's got
Mhm.
long-eared Batman, which I always really appreciate. The stuff that McFarlane's doing, predictably, that's the best in this is just when he gets to do like wing spreads and stuff. I always like cause you're basically seeing the Spawn cape before Spawn.
Mhm.
I always really appreciate the folds that he does in capes. I always like the collar and all of that.
It
Uh,
reminds me of like the way he thought about reinventing Spider-Man's webbing, where it's like
oh, exactly.
nobody else would draw this, and they would probably say it's like counterintuitive to draw it this way, but McFarlane was like, so like, no, this is how it has to be.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the way he does, like Batman's rope, the line, and I can't help but imagine it with spaghetti webbing, where it's like he's still drawing it really long and it's circling around the way the webbing would. It just doesn't have the spaghetti stuff in it because it's just a line he throws.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I, but yeah, not being the biggest McFarlane fan, you got to give him pages like this.
Oh yeah,
Like this stuff's
sure.
cool,
Mhm.
but I don't love his faces for this material.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say with his art is I do think it is better for like the big spreads as opposed to just being a comic book.
McFarlane, in a lot of because I've always said that he's my favorite artist and my least favorite writer, and I think I almost should amend that to he's my favorite like splash page artist or cover artist because like I'm cool with his somewhat more exaggerated like cartoony faces in the right context, but they don't work great for everything. Like I don't love that in his Spider-Man. I don't love that for this necessarily. Uh, but the big kind of pin-up pages I always love him for. This is just a straight up Spawn pinup, all the way down to the because you've got the character popping out of a smaller rectangular panel. We do that in Spawn all the time. He's shooting something off panel. You have the narration box that holds over from last page. That's all McFarlane knows how to do. And then you get to the bottom of the page, and it's it's the end of the issue. So he's got to cap the whole thing off with the logo, which he does with Spawn all the time.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
no,
this kind of early
exactly.
McFarlane stuff is always really interesting to me because you're seeing the groundwork that he's laying for his own creator own stuff right after this.
Hmm.
And that begins and ends what's really fascinating about McFarlane's art in this to me.
Well, it's
Uh,
funny because you also have that with Venom when you get there, where it's like,
oh yes, of course.
yeah, so it's like just take this Batman cape, slap it on Venom, and you have his original OC Don't Steal.
And I've always liked McFarlane's panel layouts too.
Mm.
Where he's got like a big panel with a character or something in the background, and then smaller panels right in front of that. He does that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You're right that he has a tough time communicating scenes sometimes, which he gets over some later
Especially
in his career.
action. Yeah.
But anyway, let's back off a little bit now and talk about story. So you've broken down what actually happens in the book, Austin. I am fascinating. I am fascinated. Pardon, I'm fascinating. I'm fascinated to know what you think of this story, and if you have some of the same reservations about it that I do.
Yeah, I'm very mixed on it. I don't know exactly where to land on certain things, so I'm gonna guess we probably have some of the same reservations.
It sounds like it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so I'm gonna throw out the biggest elephant in the room, which is I don't think this should be called year two. Um,
Agreed. Well, okay. I'm mixed on that too, though, because I like it at least for putting it in a period in history. I think this story absolutely has to happen early on. But like,
sure, sure.
if we'd already had like, I don't know if it was like a secret files thing or if it was I can never remember the name.
Legends of the Dark Knight.
Well, that would be good too. There's another book that was like,
Oh,
Batman Confidential. This would have been
oh,
a good story for that kind of thing. But you're right, either of those.
yeah. No, I agree with that. It should be early. I think for me, and maybe it makes more sense that they're working on this before year one comes out. Because I just think it's really weird to call your story year two when it's not the full year like year one is, and like it seems like it's maybe over like the course of like a week. And I kind of wish it had both a broader scale in that, and I think it would give some of the plot stuff more time, because my main issue is I don't really understand why a lot of things are happening, and they feel like they went, okay, this is the idea we want to do, and then it just kind of happens, and I go, okay, I think that's interesting, but I don't know that I buy that it's happening.
So you and I talked about this a little bit off camera. What I'm trying to figure out is if the year idea is a bunch of time passes in the middle and important things happen off panel that we don't see and we have to catch up, like particularly Bruce Wayne and Rachel falling in love, because initially, like, I think she is maybe a little taken with him, but is prioritizing her plan to be a nun, and then is really put off by the fact that he kind of manipulates his way into a date with her, and then immediately
Yeah, he's getting
after,
real creepy.
yeah, a little bit, and also I'm not really sure what he sees in her besides she's attractive.
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
I've personally, and I know some people feel differently about this. I personally don't, especially real early on in his career, don't mind a Bruce Wayne that is both trying to fulfill the vow he made to his parents and also, it, date someone or try to marry someone. But usually, the way we play that when it's really effective is he didn't think that we even do this with Andrea Beaumont, right? Like, he didn't think he would prioritize a woman, but then he finds what he thinks is the one, and they really complement each other. And like, this girl is respectable and she's likable, and there are interesting parallels with her and Bruce Wayne's backstory, but he doesn't know about those yet.
Well, that's
And
what I was gonna say, is that I don't
she's
think
kind of just
it
some
draws
girl
enough
to
of a
him.
connection between them, because you have the whole thing where obviously he's Batman and she watched her mom get gunned down, and so she's becoming a nun to like do justice through that. And I don't think that comes enough in their relationship, but I think that's supposed to be the reason why they're infatuated together. Like, she has a throwaway line about how she like can see more into his soul through his eyes because of what he's been through or something.
Yeah, but on his side, there's none of that. It feels
Yes.
too love at first sight. Like he seems to just run after her. The nun thing seems like a hurdle he has to go over, not a thing that makes her more enticing to him.
Hmm.
Now, I do like her giving him up at the end because we kind of flip the script with what happens to Batman's parents, where when she finds out that her father was the Reaper, of course, we're just giving everything away like we usually do with the Vault, um, she doubles down on the vow finally.
Hmm.
And then basically becomes her own version of Batman. I like that a lot. Like the overall trajectory of her character arc in parallel to Batman's is good, but she doesn't really work
Hmm.
as a love interest.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then the other big thing I think happens way too fast is that
And it's also just too convenient that she's the Reaper's daughter. There's a lot of real convenient stuff in the story, I think.
mhm. And the other big thing is that Batman meets the Reaper once, and the Reaper beats him in a one-on-one fight, and Batman goes, "Okay, well, I guess I have to get a gun and kill him now." And I was like, I don't really understand why that's the logic, except that's the big thing we want to do with this book.
Did it? Yeah. Let me use that to springboard us back to the time question. Did it need to be a couple issues longer to flesh some of that stuff out? Like, would it have?
Yes.
Do you think that was just a case of rushing, where it's like we've outlined this story, like on paper, Batman's gonna feel like the only way he can take out this villain is fire with fire. He uses, he, he uses weapons that are like mortally wound people that kill people, and so I have to also do that. But it doesn't
Yeah, and it
really
makes me
work
wish
because he only
that.
fights in the one time. Like I had the same thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and in his
Sorry,
introduction,
lethal weapons is what I was trying to say.
he talks about how Frank Miller did his thing with year one, so for year two he wanted to do something very different. And I feel like that's maybe a place where we should have leaned more into being a direct sequel to year one, where you go, okay, like Batman's kind of steamrolled through people this whole time, and now he has this one threat he can't beat. So now he's lost and he doesn't know what to do with it. But it just plays like he goes, "Oh, well, I lost a fight. I guess I'll kill him." And like, I don't know. I feel like that's weird to immediately drop all of your principles.
Well, what's messy about it is I feel like, and tell me if I'm going too far with this critically, because I was a little bit with it, even though I thought that was rushed at first with the idea of, like I said, oh no, I have to use the same methods to take this guy out, so I guess I have to be a killer now, and he gives up. Like I wanted to see that played out better, but I understand that as an idea, and then what gets messy about it is it almost reads like this is supposed to be the origin for why Batman doesn't use a gun. But he already doesn't use a gun until he decides to pick one up because of extenuating circumstances. Wouldn't this
Yeah.
story play better if it was even earlier in Batman's career? Was maybe like his second outing, so not year two, but like mission two.
Or
And
you go into year one and you like pick up like in the midpoint or something,
yeah, or
like a
just
prequel.
or even right after it, where he's kind of questioning, his initial decision, like should I actually be non-lethal? Maybe this is the only way to take out these kind of villains. Maybe he finds out about the Reaper and didn't know about him at first, somehow. I mean, this kind of plays like, and I don't know, this in continuity doesn't work great because the Reaper should be a much bigger deal and a thing that gets talked about all the time,
Mhm.
because we're told at the beginning of this that there's a nice scene with Gordon on a talk show that establishes that he's the commissioner now,
Yeah,
and
that's a great scene.
it's a good scene, and that was the most Miller type scene in this, and he's talking about how there used to be this vigilante that like kept the streets clean, but at what terrible cost, and that after he left, it went downhill again and all the corruption and violence came back to Gotham. And so the idea is you need a vigilante like Batman in Gotham because that's how extreme the crime is. But the question is, how far do your methods have to go? And
and that I think is just genuinely one of the best like official standpoints on why Gordon would work with Batman.
Yes, it's really good.
He goes like, oh well, he's going to do this anyway. Is like, at least this way we can kind of keep him in check to a degree.
Yeah, because the Reaper we had no control over, and he was terrifying and like stabbed people to death, and and so the question then is, does the pardon me, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're okay. Oh God, now you've lost me. Where were we? Gordon. Da 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 da.
So like I kind of like the idea. This is where I was going to go with that. I sorry, apologies. I kind of like the idea in a vacuum or for like an alternate history, or if we had kept going with it, of you have one vigilante that you kind of rely on, like you will Batman. But like I said, it doesn't really work in the continuity because you'd think like he was basically a nuclear deterrent. Like you would think that he would be talked about all the time. And then when you get to the end of the story, like I said, you take him out, and we'll talk about this whole thing, where, because it's messy, where like Batman is given the opportunity to kill Joe Chill because he's decided he's okay with, maybe he's not actually okay with it, but he's gonna be a killer now. This is a thing that comes up in Batman stories a lot, of course, the question of what would he do if he was faced with his parents' killer. And so here we just straight up do it, and he has to work with him, which again is a provocative, fun idea, but I immediately question, how can you possibly stick the landing with that as an idea when it's not some kind of Elseworlds thing or something, where Batman is actually going to pal around with Joe Chill with the gun that killed his parents, which just seems really easy and on the nose and extremely unlikely. Like, I'm in a weird place with it immediately. Like I said, this whole thing was a fascinating curiosity for me before it was a great story, and there's really good ideas in this, and I like O'Barr's take on Batman a lot, apart from the gun-toting thing, because that just feels like a gimmick to me, where I'm like, I just don't know how much I buy it. And then you get to the end, and the choice to kill Joe Chill is taken away from him by the Reaper, and so I was wondering how you felt about that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. We have to kill off both villains.
And of course, Batman's not going to be allowed to use the gun, or he's not really Batman anymore.
Well, there's weird stuff too, like the cops corner the Reaper, and they're about to kill him, and Gordon, in fact, is like, "I'm about to shoot him," and Batman's like, "No," and then he shoots the gun out of Gordon's hand, which is the big like, "I'm working with the criminals now" moment.
That was going too far.
And I was like, okay, but Gordon was literally about to shoot him. Like...
Yeah, that's true. The problem would be solved. I was distracted just by the idea that Batman would turn a gun on Gordon. Like, that was another part that was too easy. Where, like, I say I like O'Barr's take on Batman. The one part where I'm not sure about it is he is a perfect shot because he's Batman.
I mean,
because at the beginning, Alfred's like, "Oh, wait, you've been practicing." No, I haven't shot a gun in years. I'm just perfect at it.
I mean, Batman uses gadgets that are kind of like guns, probably. So
yeah, okay, but I much prefer the idea that he just does target practice in case it comes up. It was a bridge too far to go. Yeah, I haven't shot a gun in a really long time. I'm just this good at it. That was preposterous.
Like, well, you know, I use dart guns and stuff. Like, I have used things that are like this, Alfred.
So,
idiot.
So I'm getting my thoughts back together. Where I started to go about the ending earlier is I and this is the big thing I'm most on the fence about, Austin, is if this was, like I said earlier, all about like set earlier in Batman's history and definitively the origin for why Batman doesn't trust himself with a gun. He's like scared to pick one up. It works a lot better. The problem is that he's going around without one for a long time before this. I had a huge. I really resisted how easy that choice is taken from him from the Reaper, and then I started to think about it, and I was like, for the sake of just this story, I kind of like it, and I liked it more after reading The Circle because The Circle goes back to it a little bit. I like the idea that having that choice taken away from him, Batman will never know what he would have done in that situation. And in not knowing, he goes, I can't trust myself with a gun, I might use it. Like, I was really close to doing it, and I don't actually know if I would have or not. I really like the idea of that haunting him. And if that was, like, one of the first Batman stories, where he goes out initially with a gun, like he did in the early Golden Age stuff, that's pretty good, actually. It just doesn't really work here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this book is they have interesting
And I mean, with the
ideas
rest of the
ideas.
history of Batman, and with this fitting in someplace, like that's why it doesn't work for me.
No, I think this is a book where they have ideas and interesting ideas, but they're not really sure how to get there. So it just kind of goes, okay, now this is happening, and don't really question it because that's what this book is.
Because the thing
And
is,
I go, okay, but like,
well, I'm with you. The thing is, I didn't even have that thought until we get to that panel in Full Circle where Batman flashes back to that moment and he goes, I still have no idea what I would have done in that moment. Like, he actually says that, and I went, oh, that's what that was about. Like, that's actually pretty good. But I didn't even get it from that book. I had to read the follow-up.
yeah,
Maybe
for
on another
sure.
read or something I would have. But and I think truncation is a problem. I think too much stuff happening off panel is a problem. I think not knowing how much time is passing in between is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I need a lot more with why he has to go that far to beat the Reaper and why he has to work with the mob.
The
and pick up a
organized
gun.
crime stuff, you kind of suggested this earlier. It feels like it could happen in a couple of weeks or less.
Yeah,
Like,
this story could maybe be a weekend or it could be like a month. I don't know.
yeah, it's hard to say just how much time it takes, and it does feel like it has that problem where it feels like more time is passing for Batman than it is for the rest of the story.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like the beginning of Kick-Ass 2. like it has that whole thing.
yeah, especially like with the gun thing. Like the Reaper doesn't beat it, and I mean, this is comics, so it's hard to be like, well, it's a sequel to this technically. But, when you look at year one, like when he first goes out before he becomes Batman, like where he's just a vigilante and he almost dies, like that's way worse than what the Reaper does to him. But he doesn't pick up a gun then. Like there's just a lot of
Oh, that's a good point.
like, just why? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you almost want to see more specific adventures in between, because even at this point in his career, the Reaper doesn't seem insurmountable.
Yeah, I
Like
feel like
he's
it
played
maybe would have
here.
been better if we did a year two that was the full year,
Yeah,
and you're like jumping forward and stuff like year one does, but instead of there being just kind of this one mobster guy that runs solve crime, like there's all these different villains coming up, and the big through line is the Reaper, and like that's like the one big thing that he can't deal with and doesn't know what to do with. And I don't know, I think that would work a little bit better.
yeah, and I mean, I'm rewriting it when I say this, or the other way you could take it is you could have it break Batman psychologically to some degree, and it would take longer. Again, like there's no way to do this in one issue the way O'Barr attempts it, where just straight away he goes, "Yep, I guess I'm picking up this gun," However you feel about the fact that he has Joe Chill's gun, by the way, because I never bought that. And when you get to full
When he
circle, it's
has it specifically under the big portrait of his parents.
yeah, which is messed up. And I don't know. This Batman, I keep saying I like O'Barr's take on Batman. Maybe I don't. Maybe I just like the one-liners and how
I mean,
like
I like other stuff that that I've read by him, and I don't like hate this, but
no,
like
no,
I have a lot of
I don't
issues
need
with
it. And
it.
we should talk more about some of the stuff that we actually liked in it. It's just the critical stuff is kind of more interesting to me
No,
right
I
now
think
in
this
this
is
moment.
one of those great examples of a book that was done way better in a adaptation, if you count Phantasm as
Yeah.
an adaptation.
Well, and I think you should. I mean, let me say this real quick too, since you brought that up. Robert Wilde was kind of questioning just how much this was actually looked at for Phantasm, and that is debated very much among fans. In fact, I wish when I met some of the guys that worked on animated series at a convention this year, I had brought that up and taught and asked them about it because I didn't think to, and I should have, because like even and you know, grain of salt with wikis, of course, but like even the main Wikipedia article brings up this book in its opening paragraph about that movie, where it's like, it seems to be loosely adapting that, and it does, and it's hard to believe that they weren't looking at this at all. But you know, Robert mentioned that like the like kind of Reaper Wraith idea is not new, and that is true. But there are specific plot points that are in both things that are just kind of indisputably too close to be coincidence, because it gets pretty close to the framing thing that Phantasm does.
Yeah, well, and this also, oh, sorry, Phantasm also is looking really hard at year one, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that they wouldn't look at year two as well.
And both of them are doing, both year one and two are interested in origin material.
hmm Yeah, exactly.
See, I
It's
just wanted
definitely
to,
possible. It's more possible than Rachel in Begins.
yeah, yeah, and I think likely. But you're right. Like, if it is adapting this material at all, it that's a better adaptation, and because just what Phantasm is a lot more interesting. Robert says everyone who worked on the movie has always said the similarities to the comics are coincidental. Bruce Timm said he read the comic and it may have been in the back of his head. Well, I mean, that's enough for me. Like they don't have to be going back to this directly, but like even subconsciously, there's no way this wasn't in the back of somebody's mind.
Well, we did say loosely adapt.
Yeah, and it only came out like 6 years before that movie did, or five.
Yeah, something like that. What year is that movie? 90.
It's 92 or 3.
Yeah,
So yeah, 5 or 6.
and 1 or 2 years after Full Circle.
So here's where it also gets way too coincidental for me. And you and I have talked a lot about coincidence and convenience in comics lately, where sometimes it's done really intentionally, pardon me, and it's just that kind of melodramatic book. This wants to be more down to earth and believable than even the Englehart stuff we were talking about, where it would just like it wasn't taking itself too seriously and it would intentionally do some kind of creatively convenient things. This is not that, I don't think. And so I have a hard time with stuff like, and tell me if this bothers you at all, Austin, but I have a tough time with things like Batman's decided to start carrying the gun that killed his parents, and 24 hours later, he's working with Joe Chill. That is too damn easy.
No, exactly. Like I said, it's like they had a lot of ideas and they didn't know how to get to them. So it just goes, okay, and now this.
And Full Circle has that too, where it's like we're dealing with the Reaper, and so it's got to be all about Joe Chill again. And it's at least a little bit less convenient in that the reason we get to the Reaper is because that's who killed Joe Chill in the first place. But it still felt a little bit too like nice and neat as a sequel.
And the setup of it, I think, is really weird because the son of Joe Chill has to be both where his dad died and then also where the Reaper died, which are in different locations. And Batman only gets the location because the Reaper's like, go to this place, and which that guy did not wouldn't have been able to figure out because it was based on who Bruce Wayne is, but Joe Chill's son didn't get any of that. It's like, I don't know,
I didn't
him
even
being
think
in
about
both
that.
places is also really convenient, and just there, like, it just feels like he read the book.
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't even thinking about all of that. What threw me off about Joe Chill's kid is when you get to the end and Batman's like, well, he has this big speech where he's like, the whole thing has gone full circle because that's the name of the book, so he has to say it right at the end of the story. It reads like a TOS episode, and he goes, it's all gone full circle where my parents were killed, and then Joe Chill was killed, and now there's me, and there's Joe Chill's kid, and hopefully he grows up and he's better than all of us. And I'm like, he wants to be his dad who's a mob enforcer. That kid's not going to grow up okay. Like, I don't know what about this particular event in his life is going to make him turn it around and be better than both Joe Chill and Batman. Like, okay.
For Joe Chill's grandkid, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, he saw his dad get beat up by Batman, so maybe he'll turn around.
Yeah, I don't.
But I do like that they stand over the kid and they're like, either he'll turn around or we'll just beat him up in like 20 years.
No, that's right. Yeah, that ending reads kind of unintentionally cynical, which is really funny. Where Robin's like, "But we'll be ready for him, right, Batman?"
See, for me, it plays like the ending of a sitcom. Like, they're like, oh, well, we'll just beat him up in 20 years. Then you get the laugh track, and then the Full House theme starts playing.
That's good. Yeah. Well, either of those works. Either that or the TOS, everybody's laughing for no reason at the end. Like I like either of those, because Batman and Robin are also basically doing that. They're like, yeah, we'll be ready for him, and then we go even farther. We'll just make it like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, where they just then they have like a still frame when they go to credits. Where, like, they're laughing, and then they pause at the screen.
They both jump up in the air and freeze, and then Ocean Man starts blasting.
The other thing I just didn't buy about the guns. We are more down on this book than I'm meaning to, because I really enjoyed the atmosphere and a lot of the art, and I had more fun with the McFarlane stuff than you did. And this is just an era of Batman I always enjoy reading. Like I said, this is a fun curiosity. So like all this stuff I'm criticizing about, like it was fun to read. It just, a lot of it doesn't really work at the end of the day. But I don't know how much I'm not angry about it.
No, I would say I'm maybe a little frustrated and like while reading it, because I'm like, oh, like I wish you were maybe doing this a little differently. But it's not like I'm not walking away going like, ooh. It's more like, oh, like that's too bad that it didn't end up like a little bit better. But at the same time, I'm also really glad I finally read this, because this has been on my radar for like over a decade at this point, and I finally got off my butt to read it.
Well, the most frustrating thing about it is just that it's supposed to count, because it feels like somebody in the comments earlier suggested that this gets contradicted a lot by later stuff. And
well, I think
I think that's
maybe not at this point.
I think that's right, because I feel like Batman in like even in continuity comics way too often says, man, I don't know what I would do if I ever faced my parents. I'm like, but you did though.
No, I think like pretty quickly year 2 was just replaced with Long Halloween, which is a book I like better anyways, so it's like I'm fine with that.
Yeah. No, that's true. And people were saying that Long Halloween seems to retcon some things, and even like year 3.
Well, yeah, because one especially year 3 is where we introduce Robin, and then we get that with Dark Victory, which is basically a year 3 as well.
But I've always been in the camp that kind of wants those to be their own thing and not really be in continuity. Like I have that with several of those like really big seminal Batman stories where they're too much in. I'm getting off the beaten path here, but they're like year 1 I make an exception for because it's so fundamental.
Yeah, there's not much you would really change, I think. There is a weird
but
thing.
Like Killing Joke,
the outro.
But like Killing Joke, I don't need to be in continuity except for creating Oracle. and even that you could do some other way, or just like rewrite Killing Joke in a more kind of in continuity way, like that it doesn't feel like it fits with everything else to me. And that's not even specific events that happen in it. It's just, and I don't know if this makes any sense, because every like writer and artist that comes on to a book like this has their own style and does it their own way. But it's so stylistic, it just feels like an imaginary story or an Elseworlds or just a out of continuity story to me. And I have that with Long Halloween also.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a weird thing. I don't know if you read the outro, but he talks about how he's really glad that year 2 is the thing that links year 1 to Dark Knight Returns and Dark Knight Strikes Back. And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like, okay.
I guess.
Like, I don't really see that in any way, but okay.
Well, and Miller's always acted like he has his own continuity of Batman stories, and first of all, no, just in counting all of his stuff together, including All-Star, like no. But secondly, the idea that
I'm more no on the Batman and Spawn. The crossover is technically in that continuity.
That too, but also it's not its own continuity in the first place because some of it is in continuity already.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm getting off track.
It becomes semantics.
The other the other really contrived thing that I had a tough time dealing with, because I was wondering this the whole way through year 2, and then you get an answer for it finally in full circle, as if like they got letters about it. So they went, well, if we're doing a follow-up, we better explain this. How did Batman get Joe Chill's gun? So Austin, imagine that you're a murderer for a moment, okay? Imagine that you're in an alley and you're trying to steal stuff from people that you're mugging, and you end up accidentally or otherwise killing 2 of the 3 people that are standing there.
Would you then hand the gun to the child whose parents you just killed?
Well, he didn't hand it to him, but he might as well have. He might as well have. If you run off, are you likely to clench the gun for dear life or toss it off into the grass? And the thing is, you could say, well, you know, he's panicked, he's in a situation he's never been in before, and like I don't know how green exactly Joe Chill is in the mob game right then, or in just crime, because like he seems like just a everyday mugger. I don't even know if he's involved in organized crime yet when he does that. Yeah. But still, like, he's on the street. I would think he would have enough street smarts that if he killed someone, the first thing he would think of is his own self-preservation. I don't want anyone to find the gun and get the fingerprints.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know from first-hand experience, when I kill a child's parents, I hand them the gun before I leave and say, I'll see you in 20 years, where we can team up to fight the Reaper.
And then you get to the end and you find out that Batman did the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when he almost killed Joe Chill, he, too, just dropped the gun on the ground?
No, it's even worse. This was
Didn't one of those,
like, moments. So, he takes the gun and he buries it in concrete in the Wayne Tower that they're building. And then Joe Chill's son, because he watched him do it, goes to that spot, puts a bomb on it, blows up, and then pulls the gun out of the concrete.
Oh, that's how he got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I breezed through this a little bit, but I just thought it was weird that somebody was able to get that gun. Okay, that's how he got it.
No, it is, because when that happened, I was like, what? Like, how does he even know where it is? And then later on, they go, I saw him put it in there. I'm like, oh, okay, but like, how did you even know that they were there? Like, all of this is really built on a faulty foundation.
I did really like the image, and it's just out of context because ultimately it's a movie they made of this. But I did kind of like the image of Bruce Wayne's reaction to his parents dying, being just screaming in Joe Chill's face and pointing at him. Because just that's not an image I'd ever seen before. That's a twist.
He needed to be played by Nicolas Cage at some point to get his Ghost Rider pointing.
Yeah, exactly. Real quick, what did you think of Full Circle on its own? I mean, you've
Uh,
talked about it a little bit, but like, did you think that it was kind of just in the same vein as year two, or was it like really kind of obligatory and unnecessary? Or
I mean, it is, but I also maybe like it slightly more just because of I like the art more, and I don't think it's as coincidental. There is still quite a bit of that, and things that I don't really understand why they're happening, but I think overall there's less of it, so I maybe liked Full Circle a little bit more.
it makes me wonder what O'Barr is like in more long form when he's getting to do like a full on run, because I've never read his detective stuff.
Yeah, and I have a lot of his detective, and I've read like bits of it here and there over the years, but it's been so long.
Gok in the comments is a name I don't recognize. Hi there, welcome. Did Joe's kids become a bad guy?
Yes,
Yes.
they became the Reaper.
Yeah, the second Reaper.
Mhm.
And then his grandkid is also named Joe and has
He's
the
Joey.
potential, yeah, and has the
He's
potential
Joey Chill.
to turn around and be better, I guess. Although I really doubt that that happens.
I wish we just went all the way and like his son was like Joseph and his daughter was
Josephine?
Josephina. Yeah,
No, just
Josephine.
Josephine.
And then, and then his grandson is Joey, and there's all Joe Chill in some form or another.
That's pretty good. It would maybe be interesting to do like a future story, and I'm surprised. I'm kind of surprised that nobody's followed this up if it hasn't happened. But it might be interesting to do a future story the where Joe Chill's grandson grows up and becomes like a Batman-esque vigilante.
That'll be in Batman Year 100, which I've never read, but that is probably there.
But you could maybe do something with that,
Yeah,
and then like you've got like a middle-aged or older man Batman that sees him on the scene and finds out who it is, and it's like, oh, I guess he kind of turned his life around, and then you'd have to decide like, where is he gonna fall between Batman and the Reaper. And
yeah.
he could be like a middle of the road guy where he's more violent than Batman likes, but he's not eviscerating people like the Reaper, and he's not like a revenge guy like the Reaper is, because the Reaper is just, I murder, like he's worse than the Punisher. He's like, I murder anyone who does any crime of any kind,
Mhm.
and that's how he cleans up the streets, and it kind of makes sense that it works. I mean,
Well,
it's
and that thing also reminded me of.
horribly immoral and not worth that, because that's
Mhm.
not what you want for a society, but it kind of makes sense that it somewhat works, like, I guess. It seems like he would be working a lot, though. I feel like you'd need like a couple hundred of those guys.
Mhm. Well, and that whole thing with the grandson reminded me of the I think it's the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, where there's like the bit at the end with the kid where he's like, I'll see you in 20 years if you decide to come after me. I think it's in that movie. It's somewhere.
Robert says typically names don't get passed down after you're known as a murderer. Yeah, but his Joe Chill's kid is like also a mob enforcer guy. So like,
I think. I'm not really sure.
yeah, I thought he was involved in organized crime.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure about that. If because he also talks about it about like, oh, he's gonna do this Reaper thing, and then after that, that's it.
Oh,
So I wasn't really sure.
okay. I'll just have to reread it at some point. It's not sticking with me, great.
I do like the image of Batman going to a club of criminals and handing them all whistles to whistle in case the Reaper shows up.
Oh wow! Sorry, of course they do that. AMC says in the Earth 12 Batman Beyond books they actually do what I'm talking about,
Oh, there you go.
and they have a. He says it's Jake Chill there, so I don't know if that's a son or a grandson.
Hmm.
It would have to be a grandson though if it's Batman Beyond, if it's in the future, a grandson or a great grandson.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Robert wants to know if you were thinking of Kill Bill.
Maybe that happens to Kill Bill, but I swear that happens in a Punisher movie. And I thought the Dolph Lundgren movie is one of those movies where I like it when I watch it, but it never sticks with me. So I'm like, I think it was there, but maybe it's not. Maybe it is just Kill Bill.
Let me just reiterate, Obar really is, or Obar, sorry, Alan is really on his game with Full Circle. Like, I don't think the story really lives up to the artwork. Like, I'll go that far.
Yeah.
The just some of these Batman poses. It's like
Oh, and there's
it's the
one.
stuff I think about from when I was a kid and loving Batman.
I
Like
think go to
visually,
the next page.
he's in very much a Breyfogle place here.
Yes, that big one when he walks into the club is one of my favorite pictures of this entire book.
It's really pretty.
It's so good.
But yeah, just to recap my main thought with this, I just wish that this was flat up the origin for why Batman doesn't use guns. It's too muddled.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I think it would have worked better in like a Legends of the Dark Knight type thing where it was just Batman : the Reaper or something.
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird for me to say this, but I guess we shouldn't get too hung up on the title, right? Like, if it just isn't called Year Two and it's called something else, maybe it's a little better.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still got a lot of those issues, but I do think, and obviously, like, it's there for marketing. Like we all know.
Yeah, and folks in the comments were saying that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why
and
it's
that is
called
something
that.
that we brought up, like when I first mentioned that.
Yeah.
I don't like that it's called that, but that's at least something, and it needs to be longer.
Well, any final thoughts, Austin?
No.
I've been wanting to talk about this forever. I'm glad we finally did. Just because I thought it was
I know.
crazy that a story like this existed that seemed to have a lot of phantasm in it, and I wasn't aware of it.
Mhm.
So the
No,
Reaper's
I'm glad
really
I finally
fun.
read this.
I liked that villain a lot.
Mhm. I forget which book it was we did recently, but there, I had mentioned when I was a kid I had like the list on my laptop of like all the books that I want to buy when I have money for them, and this was one of those books that was also on it forever that I never picked up.
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah, I was
yeah, 'cause,
talking
like
about.
this is one of the coolest covers. Like when you're like 12 years old, and it's Batman with like the big claw thing and a
And he's got a gun.
And
Yeah,
you're like, oh,
it's very
I just
provocative.
read a bunch of Spawn. What is this book? This looks cool. I
Yeah.
didn't even know it was McFarlane.
Yeah, exactly. It's hilarious that it's McFarlane. Something's in the air right there in the late 80s. Like,
Yeah,
it would have had that even without
that
McFarlane, but
night.
then that just drives the whole thing home. Like, this is the most pre-image book for Batman there is, probably.
Oh, 100%.
But real quick before we leave off, I'll just say about the Reaper. I would say that most Batman villains, and especially the best ones, are in some way the opposite side of the coin for Batman. They're like the mirror for Batman, and obviously the Joker is the exact opposite in every way. And then every other villain is like the mirror of an aspect of him. And so for the Reaper, and we do this with other villains too. Like Azrael has this. Azrael feels like almost an update to the Reaper in certain ways, but the Reaper is, you know, like if he was a programmed automaton, but the Reaper is the opposite side of like Batman's methods and like how far he'll take things.
Mhm. Yeah, no, exactly. No, and the Reaper is really cool. Like he is the best part of this book.
And I just like the idea of I just like the way that the book, it could maybe go a little bit further with it, but the way it wrestles with like how necessary it might be for Batman to like be a little bit rougher, a little bit more brutal, and then why he ultimately chooses not to do that. Like this kind of in a way like sets up the whole question of whether or not Batman should kill the Joker in a really good way.
Absolutely. Oh, one final thought I will throw out is that Batman and Gordon have a very sweet relationship in this book, where Batman just out of nowhere pops up to his office and gives him his what's it called? The smoking thing. Oh my God, his pipe.
Oh yeah, yeah, and he cracks it.
And he cracks it to show that the relationship is broken.
Right. Yeah, I'm really glad that you explained that symbolism. That was some excellent analysis there, Austin. And I would have done the same analysis in 5 minutes, and you did it in one sentence. What do you think? Now you can only give me one sentence for this too.
Okay.
What do you? This is gonna be great. What do you think the scratch like X in the bat symbol in full circle means? If there's
Batman no more.
like what are we doing symbolically with that image?
He crossed out Batman, but he's Batman no more. The Reaper X'd him out. And I didn't do a pause in that, so that was technically one sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, even for one sentence, that's a little surface.
I mean, he didn't cut deep. He only cut the surface of Batman's costume.
That's really funny. Yeah, I couldn't get a great read on that. Like, I felt like it wasn't super clear, and it was kind of just another provocative image where it's like, yeah, I mean, the obvious read is Batman's not Batman anymore, but like, isn't he though? Yeah, you know, like this is well past his choosing whether he's going to use a gun or not. I mean, it's really just the Reaper trying to stamp him out. Like,
Yep.
It's nothing like it is. Oh yeah, and I forgot about the whole like he just dyes his hair so nobody can tell that he's Bruce Wayne.
Oh yeah, that was really weird because I don't know if I missed the setup for that, but I was like,
I must have if it's there, because then Chill's kid or Chill's son is like, oh, it's someone I've never seen before. I guess I don't care who this guy is, and he just puts the mask back on him.
And then Batman takes his mask off and he goes, oh, it's somebody I don't recognize. Well, I don't care. Oh, your son is Joey Chill? Oh, no.
Or maybe the X thing is supposed to be just part of messing with Batman's head, where he sees that movie and he's supposed to like question his sanity and his past and like whether he's who he thought he was, like whether it created, that must be what it is, right? Like whether the death of his parents really created what he thought he turned into. And I guess taking that to its farthest conclusion, maybe the idea is supposed to be that if Batman believed that, he would become something more like the Reaper. I guess I don't know.
But it would be unintentional on the Reaper's part because they don't know anything about the Zorro connection.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about Zorro. I was.
Oh,
just
I thought
thinking,
that's what you were talking about because
no, that's good. I just thought it was like with what you said and with like the obvious surface thing. What does it mean in the context of the story that he's Batman no more? Like what's the identity question here? And if it has to be something about what Batman represents. Like actually represents versus what Bruce Wayne thinks it does, or like perverting that in some way. Anytime I see like a bad guy wearing a Batman suit or like ripping off the bat symbol, like it typically represents something.
Yeah, exactly.
And
one other
he makes too big of a deal out of it for it not to be a thematic notion.
One other final thought I'll throw out is like one page after this. I thought it was really funny when Batman finally snaps out of it, and he like jumps off when he's got the noose on himself. And I was like, oh, he's just gonna hang himself as his plan. I just thought that was amusing.
Yeah, he got out of that death trap really easily.
Very easily.
Robin figured out where to go really easily, and that was a very 60s Batman kind of moment where it was like, why did these villains leave a clue? I didn't understand that.
I thought that scene with him and Alfred would have ended with Alfred being like, well, you're not supposed to go, but whatever, you're like 8, so I'll drive you there. But instead, Robin drives away, and I was like, oh no, that's way worse.
That's really funny. But he goes, like, and again, I had to read this kind of speedily, so maybe I missed something. But he was like, oh, they've left a clue. You have to go, it's just the word S the letter S 5 times and arrows pointing down.
Yeah, and he goes,
So like,
"Oh,
I have to go the farthest point south in Gotham I can go, and I'm like, first of all, that's really easy, just as a clue, and second of all, why did they leave it?
well, no, it was you have to go the farthest point north because you have to go to a place where all you can go is south,
Oh, that's what it was.
but you can also go east and west from there. But
Yeah,
he goes to a North Point facility because that's the North Pole of
of
Gotham.
Gotham.
That was very much an Adam West.
Very Adam West.
Yeah.
But one thing that you can't knock Allen for, like you did with McFarlane, is that it's very easy to read the action. Like, I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and it looks great.
Anyway, well, thanks a
Yeah.
lot for watching, everybody. This is fun to talk about.
It was fun, yeah. Should I reveal what we're doing next for our comic thing or no?
Feel free, because you haven't told me yet. I don't think. Oh no, you have unless you've changed it.
No, it's the same thing. It was the thing that we were gonna start with, but then we had to postpone
But
a week.
then
So
Batman. Yeah,
Um,
because we're not gonna do one next week because we're doing Rewind and we want time to prepare for that. So
yeah, exactly. So mine was supposed to be the first of the show. It's something that we're splitting in half, and then it'll actually be my next two. Unless Cap really hates the first part, then we just won't do the second part.
that's very nice of you, but that probably won't happen. I'm sure it'll be
It
fine.
probably won't happen. But we are doing Steve Ditko's Doctor Strange. And we're splitting it up so that the final issue is, I can't remember the exact number, but it's the first issue where he beats Dormammu, because that's kind of the perfect place to split it if you're going to split that run. But I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, going back to early Silver Age Marvel, I'm really tempted. See, I'm gonna have a hard time when you pick certain things to not want to like meet you with my choices with something like relevant to what you're picking. Like, I'm so tempted to go back to that same era and do the first few issues of Daredevil in the yellow costume.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I've never read that and I've always wanted to. So if that's what you decide, I'm game with that.
I seem to like it more than anybody on the planet. I mean, it's been a while since I've read that stuff, but I really like early Daredevil.
Yeah. No, and Doctor Strange is really easy to split because there's like a perfect halfway point. Because it's like 40 something issues, but it's half issues. Like it's part of Strange Tales, which is mainly a Human Torch book for some reason.
Oh, cool.
And
So you don't have to read both parts, and then you can just read. So
No.
do they just collect a trade that's just those stories?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, they do. But because that's why when I told you, you were like, Austin, this is like 22 issues. And I was like, I know, but they're all like 8 pages. So it's really like 10.
No, that's all right. That's manageable. I mean, it's still gonna take longer to read than something like this. We got to make sure and give ourselves enough time because it's gonna be wordy. So I wouldn't.
That's not as wordy. If I remember correctly, it's not as wordy as you probably think.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Because it's very art driven.
Well, and also, I mean, it's still Stan Lee writing on it though, right?
It is, but like you can tell it's all Steve Ditko. Like we'll get there in the second half of this two-parter, but Denny O'Neil takes over, and you can't tell. Like if you weren't looking at the credits,
Oh, cool.
you'd have no idea.
James Egan wants to know if we can review Doom Patrol. So I wish that we had time to do the show weekly because I would like to occasionally take requests on this show. I don't want to do it every time, and we're doing comic requests still on the request and not taking this time slot for it. So we'll do additional comic reviews here and there over for that show. So if just quick plug for that, if there's something you really want us to take a look at, we only do the first trade for things when they're requested, but you can always make a request at the $15 tier. Doom Patrol is a thing that I could see myself maybe picking at some point, just out of curiosity, because I've read a little bit of
I think
the
it
Morrison stuff.
might be on my list because I have a list that I put together of things to bring on the show.
Oh,
and
cool.
I think it's maybe on my list.
So I don't know when it'll happen, but one of us might pick it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
definitely. There's a really creepy issue where they destroy Kansas City, which is awesome because it's where I live.
I hope they adapted that in the show.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. I bet they didn't though.
Yeah, who knows?
And if they did, they didn't shoot it on location, so nothing will be recognizable.
No, they actually blew up Kansas. They got Nolan to direct that season, and he was like, "We're gonna do it practically."
Every time we go to Kansas on TV, it's always in Vancouver, and it drives me nuts.
I don't know,
Like,
tomato, tomato, really.
how is I that big of a Smallville fan when like I live 15 minutes from where Smallville would have to be, and everybody's saying sorry, and the landscape doesn't look anything like what we have here. There's like freaking mountains, and like it's Kansas, right? And then they do the same thing in Heroes, where they actually go to my hometown in Lawrence, and they do the real cliche like, oh, it's surrounded by farmland and nothing's built up out there, right? And I'm like, not anymore. Like, it used to look like that 25 years ago.
Well, Cap,
but it's not
I
like that
promise
now.
you, one day I will film a TV show where we film in Lawrence, Kansas, and the characters are like, "Oh my God, I've never been to Vancouver before."
See, that's what I want to
So
do.
nice.
No, I want to go. I've had that thought. I want to go to Lawrence and set a film in Vancouver. That would be so funny for me and no one else. But
No one else.
but I would love to do that. Be like, why did you match Lawrence for Vancouver? Yeah, because Vancouver always matches Vancouver for Lawrence. Anyway. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. We will see you again real soon with more cool stuff in Evolution. Austin and I won't be here tomorrow night because I've got company coming into town to work on the Superhero Rewind movie. So we'll be back for regular stuff again next week. And I may try to sneak a stream in somewhere before next Wednesday. But if not, I'll see you then. And thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin the Day Ghost.
Yes, and I just remembered I forgot to answer this question. At the beginning, James Egan asked us which Marvel writer would we like to see do Batman. If we're talking current, I'm going to say Hickman, because he's like the only writer they have. So I'm just glad I answer out quickly before we end.
That's the writer they have.
That's the writer.
Yeah. I mean, like, Aaron's real versatile. I'm sure he would do something cool with a Batman run. I mean, and I'd rather see Jason Aaron on Batman than the last 3 or 4 Batman writers.
Mm-hmm.
Just regularly. Yeah. Although that's not fair, because I mean, there's some King stuff I like, there's some Snyder stuff I like, and even now there's some Tynion stuff I like. Okay, but
yeah, and for me, I tend to think of artists first before writers, so I had to think about it for a second. So I went, I guess Hickman. I don't know.
Well, and I didn't notice. Did he just say artist?
Or he did say writer, yeah. Like,
did say writer.
For me, it's always been Ditko. I wish we had like a really good Batman run.
Well, yeah, but I said a writer.
Huh? No, I know. I said Ditko is an artist.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I thought you were saying it was weird that I went to Jason Aaron because you're just thinking of writers, and I'm like, that's a writer.
No, I was saying if we only have to think of writers, like I would go to Hickman, but I tend to think of artists first.
Sorry,
that's not what the question was.
Oh, okay. I was so confused when you said that. I'm like, but I went to a right. Okay.
Anyways, bye everybody.
See you later, folks.